What's up, guys? Paulie Malignaggi of Paulie TV. Quick thoughts on Turki Al-Sheikh. I'm hearing that he may be interested in buying out all the promoters. It's something that I've thought is much needed in order to make sure all of the fights happen and there's no television politic hurdles and no promotional hurdles. I don't know how serious or the veracity of this rumor. I think it can only be good as long as there is not a casual element that's brought into the mix. I think there are certain fights in boxing that have to happen, but I think it's very important that you don't create a fantasy boxing league where weight classes no longer matter and you're just looking to put stars against stars. Because I'm starting to also hear, little grumblings of fights like that. And sometimes they're cool, don't get me wrong. Sometimes, fights outside of weight classes between two stars can be cool. But when it becomes the norm, it gets a little played out because the top contenders in each weight class then don't get those opportunities against the star of the weight class or against the champion of the weight class. So I think there's pros and cons there, but I think there's probably more pros, more positives, because there's a lot of fights in boxing that typically don't get made, a lot of politics in boxing, and a lot of promotional alliances, a lot of television alliances that prevent this from happening. I know I've heard that people saying all the fights happen in the UFC, they don't happen in boxing. I wouldn't exactly say that because the UFC is its own promotional company, so it's essentially as if all the top rank fighters fight each other, which already happens. All the promotions in boxing already do this. They make their fighters fight in-house, the major promoters do, and that way they keep all the money. So I wouldn't exactly call it an MMA model, because in MMA the model is all the promotions keep their fighters and they keep everything in-house. One does this, PFL does this, UFC does this, etc. Even in bare knuckle, you have this in BKFC and BYB, etc. So I think boxing, being the only open market sport, sometimes shoots itself in the foot when it does this because it doesn't have to do this. So I think the issue here is, will Turki Al-Sheikh be able to supersede the promotional hurdles, and more importantly, even the TV hurdles, because there's a lot of TV contracts going on here. PBC has Amazon, Top Rank has ESPN, The Zone has the Matchroom and Golden Boy stables. And, at times you do get fights that jump outside of those promotional alliances, but it's very, very difficult to make. With a guy who has the power of Turki Al-Sheikh, the financial backing, and the interest in boxing to do it, I think it could be very, very interesting. I just don't want to hear too many of these fantasy fights. I'd rather watch, for example, I'd rather have enough money put up, for example, to do Gervonta Davis against Shakur Stevenson rather than Gervonta Davis against Naoya Inoue, for example, who is on his 4th or 5th weight class. He already got dropped in his last fight. He looks tremendous. He looks terrific, but weight classes exist for a reason, and Gervonta's a big puncher, and he's a bigger guy. See, things like that, I start to worry if the casual element of it would hurt this, because then guys who would be deserving of getting the fights in those right weight classes. Think about all the possible matchups you have in some of these weight classes you can make just within the weight class. So lightweight, super middleweight, just to name a few. Obviously the heavyweight mix, they've already been very, very interested over there in Riyadh season, and they've done terrific with the heavyweights. They've matched them up brilliantly and made a lot of fun fights. So I think if you end up doing this with the smaller weight classes, buying out the promoters could be a positive thing. Like I said, I just worry about the fantasy boxing element of it, to where it gets to be too much, and then the fights within the weight classes don't get made. I want to know what you guys think. I think it's more positive than negative, honestly. I'd rather see this happen, and at least know in my mind that all the fights could be made. I want to know what you guys think at home, man. Do you guys think that Turki Al-Sheikh buying out all the promoters would be a positive thing for boxing, or do you prefer it to be this way, where you can still make the fantasy fights if the fight's bigger, but, the fights within the weight classes don't happen? Again, I want to see Shakur Stevenson and Gervonta Davis. That's a fight that I want to see. I know it's not a fight. I know people have a little bit of an issue with Shakur not always being exciting. But then again, there's the NBA, the NFL. That's not always the most exciting team that wins in championships as well, or in the Premier League and soccer and whatnot. A lot of times it's the best defensive team. So I get the whole non-entertainment part of it, but people don't stop watching other sports when the win team that wins the championships is not entertaining. I want to see the matchups between the best, and sometimes the best get to being the best with different styles. It's not always a preferred style. Sometimes it's the preferred style, sometimes it's not. But nonetheless, I do believe that all these guys should be able to be matched up against one another. I'm Paulie Malignaggi. This is Paulie TV.